nice resonance to the table.
There you go. So welcome to another Creative Spin podcast. This is the place where we try to get a whole bunch of creative people and just talk about some interesting things. And today we're going to there you go. We didn't bring the drum sets, but we're using the table. I think this it'll be interesting to see how it comes out. But we're here today with Paul Houle, president and founder of Boom Rhythm. It's all about the rhythm.
It's all about rhythm.
There you go.
People
So we'll be talking about interactive music making. That basically what you're trying to do is bring teams together. We'll be talking about what it is to speak in a corporate environment, and basically we're gonna try to dig into how this all became a reality for you. So
Sure.
We'll be talking right after the intro. Today's podcast is brought to you by Workplace One, a company offering boutique private offices, co-working spaces, virtual office solutions, and meeting rooms. Amazing spaces in the best neighborhoods in Toronto and Kitchener-Waterloo. Ideal for entrepreneurs, companies, and passionate business people. These spaces provide a stimulating environment to build, network, and drive business. With 5 different locations in Toronto and 1 in Kitchener, Workplace One is definitely where you want to be with your business. For more information, just jump over to their website at workplaceone.com. Paul, thank you for swinging by the Creative Spin podcast. To everybody that's listening to us or watching us at this point, how about you give us your little origin story? So how did you get into this whole music arena and mixing that with the corporate side of business, all of that thing?
I know it's such a mix-up. Anyway, thanks Jamie. Thanks for having me here.
No, pleasure.
Wow, it's a bit of a long story. I'll try and condense it as much as I can, but I'm a musician. I've always been a musician, always loved music. Ever since I figured it would get me out of English class in high school, being in the band and going on band trips and stuff. Unfortunately, music is what helped me get out of high school as well. It's probably one of the main things. And I went on to university to study music, not really knowing where that would take me, but I just wanted to be a rock star, but I ended up being a symphony musician. So that's
because it's still music, right?
It is, and the cool thing is I was a percussionist or a drummer. I mean, a drum set was my first love, but I had a band teacher who said to me, "Listen, Paul, you can play the drum set, but you see all these other instruments we have here, the timpani and the kettle drums, or the bass drum, or the cymbals, the triangle tambourine, the xylophone. You need to learn to play all that too, because that's what you're going to play in high school band, right?" And when you audition for university, you need to play those instruments to get into university. Even in my first degree, even though I was playing a lot of classical music, I started the Dixieland band, for instance, and I was playing some of this.
Interesting.
Yeah, to make money. It's how I paid my way through university.
Oh, that's cool. Okay,
yeah,
so
and
there were some profits there.
There's some profits there. I also started to teach a little bit, which was something, I realized, I could make some money teaching even younger kids, like, 8-year-old kids when I was in university, make like more money per hour than working at the Bay, right? Or something.
Listen, and you were doing something that you loved. So
that's right.
Perfect.
That's right.
Perfect combination.
And a big thing that happened for me is I came to Toronto, and at the University of Toronto, there were some musicians from a group called Nexus. They've been around for 40 years now. This year, 40 seasons. And these were symphony musicians who are also, in their beginnings, were really interested in music from different places in the world. So I got to study with these guys and hang out with these guys, and they exposed me to African drumming and drumming from other parts of the world. When I was at the university, and I said, "Wow, this is cool!" The big thing was that what I realized is drumming from other parts in the world is not so much about people who are up on stage drumming and having an audience. People, if you go to an African village and there's something to celebrate, everybody's playing, everybody's singing, everybody's dancing. It's a very communal activity, and it's like that in so many cultures. It's like that in the Brazilian culture and Middle Eastern cultures, and I thought that was really great.
That's what kind of got you into the corporate side of things?
Absolutely. It was something that I realized later on that we need more of here. There's just
that sense of a team, of a group effort, right?
Building community.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what those cultures are so great at. And in the classical music world culture, classical music, I love classical music, but it's still this, you're really a superstar at what you do, if you will, or a real expert, like a concert pianist or any kind of soloist, and the people in the audience are admirers, really, and rightly so. But Western European classical music has always been like that, whereas in these other cultural musics, it's just that community vibe is so prevalent. So I started to study music from different cultures, and around the same time as my career was developing here in Toronto, I was playing with the opera and the ballet and symphony orchestras, and wearing my tuxedo and playing triangle and doing all that stuff I was trained to do. But at the same time, I was also playing at the Bamboo on Queen Street, which is no longer there. The Bamboo, playing in an African drumming group. Wearing a full African costume, dripping wet with sweat, and it was like, wow, it paid better to play the triangle, but it was sure fun to play African music, right?
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
And so when did you start thinking about, this is pretty cool, and I want to do this for a living in terms of making this a business? Like, how did that come to be?
Yeah, well, musicians are slow. Well, actually, I should say I've always been interested in the business side. I didn't want to be a starving artist by any stretch. So hence that, going back to what I was saying in university, starting that Dixieland band was kind of one of my first tastes, because I got a government grant to run that over the summer in Ottawa for the National Capital Commission. I played in all the parks 3 hours a day. And they said, okay, but you're going to run this, so you got to go get a loan from the bank, and you got to pay all the musicians. And so I got my sort of taste of being the band leader. Well, guess what? You get paid more to be the band leader than the guy in the band. You get paid more to book the gigs, right? And so that's a good thing, right? And so every time I've sort of gotten involved with music, I've always sort of had a business element going. I was in a training orchestra for a while at the conservatory called the Orchestral Training Program. And from that, because I became the orchestra manager or the personnel manager, people would phone the conservatory saying, can you hire us like a student orchestra to play at this church gig in a couple of weeks? So guess what? I'm the contractor. I'm the leader of the band. I got paid more. I hired myself to play, and I also got paid to book all the other musicians, right?
See, that's how business starts.
That's it. So I've always had that sort of realizing that, wow, I could sit back and wait for the phone to ring, or I can sort of put my name out there, and that was a big part of it. And through the conservatory, again, they asked me to do this project called Learning Through the Arts, where they took musicians from different art forms. So a musician, a dancer, a puppeteer, a graphic artist, and put us in schools, tough schools in Toronto, to help kids learn curriculum. So, for instance, I wasn't brought in to teach music at all. I was brought in to help kids understand math or science or geography. And I would use what I was learning about world music and bring in all my drums and let them play, but use those as the tools for them to find ways to make a correlation between mathematical ratios in music, which is easy to do.
Okay.
And also let them have fun learning at the same time.
When you're talking about math, my head starts to hurt. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And from there, teachers wanted to do that. Principals wanted to get a sense of that. And I had some friends in the corporate world who said to me, well, what could you do for us? And I said, what are your problems?
We start winging things when we don't know what we're doing. Yeah. And then when we do know what we're doing, we start preparing.
That's right.
Isn't it interesting the way it goes?
Well, you start to realize that, okay, so you can wing it. So all that really shows is you have a little bit of aptitude, right? Yeah. What I've learned about really great speakers is they put in a lot of time and preparation, just like I would for any kind of performance I would do, hours of practicing.
And that will show at the end.
That's right.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm saying this because we used to wing a lot of the podcasts in the beginning, and now, you know what? I actually spend a little bit of time. I try to dig in, do a little bit of my investigation, find out a little bit more about my guests, and just basically be more prepared so that when we're sitting here having a conversation, I'm not just winging it, and then all of a sudden conversation dries down, and what are you going to say? There's nothing to say.
I had a great teacher by the name of John Wire, who was, again, one of these members of Nexus. And remember, he said to me when I was kind of starting to get into this, going in to do workshops and a lot more of those things, and he always said, a plan is something that you can throw away once you're at the gig and it's going great.
So true.
Right, but it's you've got to have it in your back pocket, right?
Yeah, so true. So you said you started 20 years ago, and obviously since then things have changed. The world has changed dramatically. Talk to us a little bit about how it's affected you, like how you've changed your business, how you see the world now in terms of even your music part of things, the speaking stuff.
Yeah. I think the main thing that's changed, and I'm not sure if I could put a finger on when this really happened. I think the listeners might be able to figure this out. When I first started doing this, I really took an experience, the drumming experience, and gave it to an audience of non-musicians, and found ways to talk about what I felt the drumming experience had to offer them. And certainly I certainly had some depth there because I'd studied music from other cultures and I knew its importance culturally. And that was okay. I think that's was okay to a point. But what's changed in the last 5-10 years or so is I think audiences have really are drilling down to what they want to come away from any situation, anything they put their time into, whether it's what they listen to or what they get to experience live, is the what's in it for me factor. Mm-hmm. That's what I think, and maybe we're all just more like that now. We've got our phones. We're looking at.
Are we being more selfish? You think?
Maybe. I mean, I'm hoping it's not a bad thing.
You know, I honestly, I think everything it comes and goes in waves, and things change. But I have to agree with you. I think as well, we are going into this wave of being very selfish. It's all about the selfie. It's all about me. I need this. I want this. Hopefully, we'll go into another wave right after, which is, you know what? Let's do this for the group. Let's do this for everybody. And I think that's your main objective with all these events, right? One of the parts in your website says, when saying trust me is not enough. I found that one interesting. Can you dig into that one? Well,
it's just a common, one of the reasons that, now this was a talk that came about, it wasn't even my idea. This was an idea of a client of mine who I'd done one of my listening and collaboration programs for, and she called me up and said, listen, Paul, we're getting a bunch of people together and we've got a bunch of new leaders coming in. They're being just brought in. And she said, I think we've experienced your program, but we think you could actually do a really great program on trust. And I thought, wow, that's just a client coming to me and telling me what I'm going to be good at talking about, which I thought was really fascinating. So I sat down and really thought about that. And trust, and I've written a few blog posts about it, and in thinking about it, I realized that trust is, you can't just say that to some people. Say that all the time. Trust me.
Trust me.
Trust me. And it's just not that easy. Trust is earned. Mm-hmm. Trust develops over time. Trust is every time we're having any kind of interaction with someone, there's some kind of trust being developed. You and I, right here, right now, you know, and so in the musical world, it's a really important thing as far as being able to allow yourself to be as creative as you can possibly be. If you're on a stage with other musicians you trust, that they're going to, you know, they're not judging you in a bad way. They're supporting you. You'll play much more freely. If you're in a musical environment where you're really worried about what the people are going to think about you,
you're thinking more about that part than the actual piece
that
you're
going to be careful about what you do and stuff like that, right? In a real trusting environment, I don't think of a marriage, right? I mean, how much of your real self does your spouse get to know that the rest of the world doesn't, because you have this intimate trust with each other, right? And so, that talk is really about, one of the first stories I share in that talk is about how I gained the trust of this woman who eventually became my wife, right? And it was just a series of steps that I went through as we were building our relationship. But my goal at the outset was, I said, this woman's great. I want to be with her.
Paul, thank you so much for being here, and we'll continue to talk, and we'll put all of your information on the description so people can go check out your website, check out all the stuff that you're doing out there, and yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. It's been a real pleasure being here.
All
Thanks.
right,
Thanks.
Cool. Thank you.